Hi, Deshawn. It's Dr. Turner. I wanted to make a video so that I could kind of walk you through what we're going to work on as we try to kind of modify and wrap up this work that we've been going through. So one, I want to thank you for your patience while I continued to work through some trainings to see what this would look like for online courses. So the biggest thing with that has been that main campus students have 16 weeks to do all of this work, and online students obviously only typically have 8. And so we've been trying to see how and if we support students in completing this portfolio in an 8-week online format. So thank you for your flexibility and your patience as we tried to work this out. And we had another training this morning, and so I'm gonna continue to modify because yes, as we shared before, you will do the official portfolio as a part of your student teaching, and so that is something that you will complete in its entirety. So ideally, we would be able to complete this entire portfolio in Education 410, and then you would kind of redo it for your placement in student teaching. But especially since you're going to have a completely different placement for your student teaching, we're just going to kind of use these last few weeks of your semester to see what we're able to do well, so that you have, I would rather us do a smaller portion of the portfolio, but to do it well, than to try to do all 3 tasks, but not really do them well, and for me not to be able to support you. So I've gone ahead and pulled in, opened up our 410 Blackboard course. You should still have access, so if you don't, let me know. When you go over to the course content, one of the things that comes up right here is the handbooks and resources. So what I want us to focus on is this literacy handbook. So we are going to focus on task 1. I would love it if we could do task 1 and task 2, but I'll kind of explain why I'm not going to push task 2 in just a few minutes. So when you click on this link, it'll open up the Elementary Literacy Portfolio Handbook. And so that's something important to remember, is that this has to be a literacy focus. So make sure that you're keeping that in the back of your mind as we move forward with our first task. So this was something that was built into the course when you initially took it, was to review this handbook. And so I know that you've kind of glanced at this before. It's probably been a while. So I just wanted to touch base. Making sure that we are aware of what we're going to be tackling. So this is just an overview. Again, this has 3 tasks technically. 1 for planning and instruction, task 2 on your actual instruction and engagement, and 3 assessing student learning. So we're going to really work in the next couple of weeks to focus on the planning piece. And if it's possible, we'll work on the instruction piece for task 2. So I'm going to go down here to where we start digging into what we need to do. So think of this as kind of a checklist. So you can see here, we're talking through task 1. There's also one for task 2, and there's task 3. Like, what am I supposed to do when I'm working on this? So think of this as a checklist of sorts. But let's go back to task 1 and talk about that so that we can see what we're going to be doing. So here are the parts that I want you to focus on. So this is really your checklist of things that I'm going to ask you to turn in. Your context for learning, which I know you had completed that at the beginning of 410. I think we needed some additional information. And then lesson plans, and that was something that I know you submitted also at the beginning of 410, but it was not for your current grade level, if I remember that correctly. So the important part of this is that it is something that you would be able to teach. So if you are working with kindergarten students or even preschool students, then you need to be writing lesson plans for that age and grade level. then your instructional materials, your assessments, and your planning commentary. So we'll walk through what all that means. Here's what you're going to have to do. Select one class as a focus for this assessment. So that is going to be the classroom that you are partnered with, as you normally are every day. Provide relevant context information, and so that's going to be your Part A, Context for Learning, and I will show you where we're going to do all this. It's going to be in TK20 now that you have access, so I'm going to walk you through that also. Identify a learning segment to teach and to plan and to analyze student learning for. And a learning segment is going to be 3 to 5 consecutive literacy lessons. So I just want you and I to focus on 3 lessons and to do them well. But again, remember that this has to be literacy focused. So after that, we're going to determine a central focus. So it should be what the strategy that you want your students to know by the end of your learning segment. It's going to be probably for comprehension of text, which I know at a primary level students are not necessarily reading on their own and comprehending, but they can be comprehending text through read alouds and things like that. You're going to write and submit a lesson plan for each of the lessons. So again, I said 3, so you're going to write 3 lesson plans. Select and submit instructional materials that you're going to need. Choose one language function that you're going to need them to know and understand by the end of your learning segment. And so we'll talk about what a language function is. Identify both the language function that students will be expected to use and engage in the learning task, and your instructional supports for that language. So you're identifying the language function and what the supports are for students to be able to learn that. And then respond to commentary prompts before you teach. So this is all planning. So you're not actually teaching this at any point. We need all of this to be completed before you would teach it. And then submit copies of the assessments and directions and things like that as a part of the learning segment. So again, you're going to submit your context for learning, your lesson plans, your instructional materials, your assessments, and your planning commentary. So task 1 has 5 rubrics, and they align with the parts that you're going to be submitting. So they're outlined right here, but if you continue to scroll through your handbook, it will take you to the actual task 1. So looking at this handbook, planning task 1, what do you need to think about? Think about, what do your students know? What can they do? What can they do through the course of your learning segment? What do you want your students to learn? How will you use your knowledge to inform your planning? What instructional strategies are you going to use in assessments? So here are some reflective questions to think about as you start to plan your lessons. Again, here is this list of things that you need to do. So select a class. So here's the great part about this portfolio process. It does not have to be an entire class as we think of a class. So if you pull small groups and you're working with 4 students, 5 students, that can be considered your class. So you could write your learning segment for the small group, and that is considered your class. We actually recommend that to be the case, that you are writing lesson plans for a small group and that small group is considered your class. Then you're providing the context information on that context for learning document that you've already worked on, but we need to update. Identify the learning segment plan. So again, we're only going to do 3 lessons. Identify the central focus and then the strategy. Determine the content standards, so what grade level expectations, the standard course of study standards. What are you going to be teaching to? If you're going to be doing something that's cross-curricular, make sure you check in here. What are your language demands? Writing a lesson plan. So here are just some things that your lesson plans are going to need. Of course, you're going to need your standards, your objectives. What assessments are you going to be implementing, your instructional strategies, and your resources and materials. As far as formatting wise, your lesson plan should not be any longer than 4 pages, which using the format that we have for you, it's rare that it is that long. Respond to the commentary prompts, submit your actual lesson plans, and select and submit your instructional materials, your written assessments, and any citations if you have references to outside sources in your planning commentary. So what do you need to write? The planning commentary comes at the very end, so I'm going to hold off on that because I want us to get the planning part finished. So the planning commentary will come once you've done the rest of this. So, but I do want you to take a minute and just look through this because you'll need to speak to these in your planning commentary at the end of task 1. So just be aware of this as you're building your unit plan so you are making connections in this. And this further defines your central focus, your demands, your language supports, and things like that. So here are the rubrics. So when you're looking at the rubrics, you are really wanting to know and understand what is expected of you at least at a level 3, and we want to work toward a level 4. So for your planning, how do the candidates' plans build students' understanding of an essential literacy strategy for comprehending or composing text and the skills that support it? So we're looking for you to be able to make sure that your 3 lessons build on each other and they support the learning of comprehension or composing text with clear connections to those related skills. And it talks about that up in that planning commentary above this. That's where you want to look further into that. So is this sequential and is it focused on comprehending or composing text? Then, rubric 2, how does the candidate use knowledge of his or her students to target support for literacy learning? So we're looking here to make sure that those supports are tied to the learning objectives and the central focus with attention to the characteristics of the class as a whole. So again, class is just going to be your small group, but are those supports tied to your central focus? So, is it related? Are they supporting your instruction as it relates to comprehending or composing text? Rubric 3 is about using knowledge of students to inform teaching and learning. So does the knowledge of your students in your class, in your small group, justify your instructional plans? So you justify why the tasks are appropriate based on prior learning or personal, cultural, or community assets. And you are connecting it to some research. If you're making deeper level connections to research, that's going to bump you up to a level 4. But it's making sure that you are justifying why you're choosing what you're choosing to teach. So you are choosing it because of prior academic learning, but explain to us what that is, or personal, cultural, community assets, and make sure that you're explaining that and defining what that is. If you want to refer to both, that would bump you up to a level 4 also, but let's just focus on a level 3 unless you want to focus on the level 4. For rubric 4 is about supporting language demands. So how do you identify and support language demands associated with associated with a key literacy learning task? So your learning task that you're creating, if you have general language supports addressing 2 or more language demands. So language demands, the examples are vocabulary, function, syntax, and discourse. And those are further defined in the handbook, but making sure that you are supporting those. And then finally, rubric 5, making sure that your formal and informal assessments are designed to monitor the essential literacy strategy to comprehend or compose text. So you're providing evidence here, and you're relating it to their related skills and the literacy strategy. So those are your 5 rubrics and kind of the background of what we're going to be working on. The next video, I'm going to walk you through TK20 to kind of show you how we're going to tackle this. Thank you.